Take a moment, settle in, and let the sound of the rain guide you into a place of calm. As the gentle rhythm falls around us tonight, I want to welcome you to another quiet true crime story to help you drift off, unwind, or simply find a moment of peace in a busy world. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Are you listening from the United States, the U.K., somewhere in Africa, Canada, the Caribbean, or maybe somewhere a little farther away? Go ahead and tell me down in the comments. I always love seeing where you're tuning in from, and it helps me understand where this peaceful little community is growing. And if you enjoy stories told softly, gently, and respectfully, with the soothing sounds of rain in the background, please remember to like this video, and consider subscribing so you never miss another calming true crime story. Your support truly helps these stories reach more people who need a quiet escape at night. Now, as you get comfortable and let your breathing slow down, I want you to picture a quiet evening in Washington, D.C. The streets are still damp from a recent rainfall, the kind that leaves a soft shine on every sidewalk and a cool freshness in the air. It's the kind of night where city lights blur through raindrops on a window, where everything looks a little softer, a little quieter. On a night not so different from this one, a mystery began to unfold. One that continues to haunt a city, a family, and all those who remember the warm, bright smile of a little girl named Relisha Rudd. Relisha was only 8 years old when she disappeared in 2014, a disappearance that would raise more questions than answers, and leave behind a trail of puzzling moments, missing pieces, and heartbreaking possibilities. Tonight, we're not here to sensationalize her story. We're here to walk through it gently, slowly, with the respect it deserves. As the rain whispers softly in the background, we'll revisit the quiet corners of the DC homeless shelter where Relisha lived with her family, the hallways where a trusted figure moved in shadows, and the classroom where teachers first noticed something was wrong. We'll move carefully through each moment, step by step, honoring the humanity within this mystery. Relisha wasn't a headline or a statistic. She was a child who loved to dance, who loved pink, who loved being around people. And like many children, she trusted the adults around her, even when one of those adults didn't deserve that trust. Tonight, as you settle deeper into your pillow or let your mind drift while you sit in a calm, quiet space, I want you to simply listen, not with fear or tension, but with compassion. This story isn't meant to frighten you. It is meant to be understood, explored, and remembered softly, carried gently like a memory in the rain. Over the next chapters, we'll follow the timeline that slowly unraveled. We'll talk about the shelter worker who called himself a doctor, the weeks of unexplained absences that raised alarm, and the search that grew larger and more desperate as each day passed. But we'll do it all with a steady, peaceful tone. Let the rain help your mind float, even as the story unfolds. You don't need to stay fully awake, you can drift in and out. This story will still be here. Because Relisha's disappearance is more than an unsolved case, it's a reminder of how easily vulnerable people can slip through the cracks, how important community is, and how deeply a child can be missed. So take one more slow breath. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. And let the rain settle you. This is the story of Relisha Rudd. Told quietly, gently, with care. Whenever you're ready, we'll begin. As the rain continues its gentle pattern, let your mind slow down and follow the story at whatever pace feels right. You don't need to hold every detail tightly, just let the words drift in like soft echoes in a quiet room. Tonight, we're stepping into the early chapters of Relisha's life, long before the headlines, long before the confusion, and long before the world began asking questions. Relisha Rudd was born in 2005, a little girl with a bright smile and a shy sweetness that people remembered. Those who knew her said she loved to dance, loved to laugh, and loved being around her siblings. She was the kind of child who could turn a simple moment, a toy, a song, a small joke, into something joyful. Even when life wasn't easy, she carried warmth with her. Relisha and her family lived in Washington, D.C., a city full of contrasts. Historic monuments alongside struggling neighborhoods, powerful institutions beside families trying to find stability. For many people, the city represents opportunity and change. But for families like Relish's, it was also a place where surviving day-to-day required strength, resilience, and hope. Her family had been facing challenges for a long time. Money was tight, stability was fragile, and eventually, they found themselves living in a large homeless shelter located inside an old, former hospital building. The shelter was enormous, nearly 1,000 residents lived there at any given time. Long hallways echoed with footsteps, doors closing, children playing, and staff members carrying out their routines. At night, the hum of the city outside mixed with the sounds inside, creating an atmosphere that could feel both busy and lonely. But even within that environment, Relisha found small pockets of joy. She loved being around other children, loved having little adventures in the hallways, and loved the moments when her family could be together. Kids can find warmth in places adults often see only as cold. And Relisha did just that. Her mother, Shamika, was trying to navigate life under difficult circumstances. Raising multiple children in a shelter is never simple, and the challenges can pile up quickly. From meals to school schedules to safety concerns. The shelter was meant to be a refuge, but it was also a place where hundreds of people with different needs and stresses lived side by side. Among the staff members working at the shelter was a man named Khalil Tatum. He was a janitor there, someone who had regular interactions with residents simply because of his job. Over time, he became familiar with many of the children in the building, including Relisha. People later described him as someone who gave out money and gifts to kids, someone who seemed friendly and approachable. In a place where families struggled, small kindnesses could feel meaningful, even comforting. But sometimes, people are not what they appear to be. And sometimes trust builds in ways that are not always safe. For now, though, in this part of the story, no one knew anything was wrong. Relisha spent her days attending school, laughing with friends, and trying to make the best of the life she had. Teachers said she was polite, quiet, and gentle, the kind of child who didn't cause trouble, the kind who blended into the background until someone took the time to really look at her smile. The school became an important part of her world. It was a place with structure, with caring adults, and with people who noticed her, encouraged her, and paid attention to her well-being. Teachers often become anchors in a child's life, especially when everything else feels uncertain. And in Relisha's case, her teachers would later become the first people to realize something was terribly wrong. But before that moment arrived, life continued in its slow, uneven rhythm. The shelter, with its fluorescent lights and endless corridors, was Relisha's home. The city buses that carried her to school each day passed by busy intersections, quiet neighborhoods, and places she rarely got to visit but always saw from afar. Like many children living in difficult circumstances, she learned early how to adapt, how to be patient, and how to make the most of small things. There were days when she played happily with other kids in the shelter, running or walking through the large building as if it were a maze. There were days when she curled up with her siblings, watching cartoons or sharing snacks. And there were days when she simply rested, listening to the sounds around her and finding comfort in familiar voices. As the rain continues to fall softly tonight, imagine those early days. Imagine the echo of footsteps in the shelter, the distant hum of traffic, the soft chatter of families trying to make the best of their situation. Imagine a little girl, just 8 years old, navigating all of this with quiet resilience. She deserved stability. She deserved safety. She deserved a childhood filled with certainty, not fear. But life doesn't always unfold the way we hope. Sometimes, the cracks in a system meant to protect become wide enough for someone vulnerable to slip through. And sometimes trust, especially trust from a child, can be placed in the wrong hands. We don't rush this part of the story, because understanding where Relisha came from helps us understand the heartbreak that followed. It helps us see her not just as a name in a case, but as a child with a full world around her, a world she should have grown up in. As you breathe slowly and let the rain quiet your mind, remember that every story begins somewhere. Relisha's began with love, struggle, and hope layered together. And it is within that world that the first subtle signs of trouble began to appear, signs that no one noticed right away. As the rain settles into a soft, almost rhythmic fall, let your mind drift deeper into the quiet of this story. You don't have to hold on tightly to every detail. Just let them float in, gently, like small ripples on still water. Tonight we move into the days that led up to Relisha Rudd's disappearance. A timeline filled with quiet moments, missed signals, and small actions that would only make sense later. In the early months of 2014, life for Relisha followed a familiar pattern. She went to school, spent time with her siblings, and lived within the routines that had formed inside the large shelter. Her teachers cared about her, and even though she sometimes appeared tired or withdrawn, they saw a child who tried her best to keep up. But gradually, something began to shift. It started quietly, just a few days of absence from school. Children miss school for many reasons, and at first, no one was overly concerned. It was winter, after all. Illness was common. But as the days turned into more than a week, the teachers began to worry. They knew Relisha's home situation wasn't easy, and they also knew that school was one of the most stable parts of her life. When a student misses too much school, especially without any communication from home, the staff has a responsibility to investigate. So they reached out to Relisha's mother, looking for an explanation. What came back was unusual, a claim that Relisha was under the care of a doctor. A doctor named Dr. Tatum. That name stood out. Her teachers had never heard of a Dr. Tatum connected to the school or the shelter. And something about it felt off. But at this point in the story, everything was still quiet. There was no panic, no rushing, no sense of the urgency that would soon follow. Just a lingering confusion, wrapped in concern. Soft rain taps against the window as we revisit this strange detail. A doctor who wasn't on any list, wasn't part of any health program, and didn't match anything the school had seen before. And yet, that was the explanation given for Relisha's extended absence. More days passed. The shelters were large. People came and went. And in that environment, it wasn't always easy to track where a child had been, or who they had been with. But behind the calm surface, something troubling was taking shape. Relisha had been spending time with someone she knew, someone the family had grown comfortable with. That person wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a medical professional at all. It was the shelter janitor, Khalil Tatum, using a title that didn't belong to him. For reasons that remain unclear even today, Relisha's mother had allowed her to leave the shelter with him multiple times. Maybe she believed he was helping, giving the child gifts or attention the family couldn't afford. Maybe she trusted him more than she should have. Maybe she didn't fully understand the danger. But slowly, quietly, the boundaries that should have protected a child had shifted. Meanwhile, the school took the next step. They needed something official. Documentation, a note, a signature confirming this doctor's care. And they got one. The note said Relisha was sick and needed rest. But the signature didn't look right. The writing seemed inconsistent. The explanation didn't match any known providers. Still, the truth had not yet emerged, not fully. As you listen, let the rain become a gentle blanket around this moment. Remember that in real life, warnings don't always appear with bright lights or dramatic alarms. Sometimes, they arrive softly, in a way that's easy to dismiss, until it's too late. The days continued to pass. Relisha was not seen at school. She wasn't spotted around the shelter in a way that seemed unusual, at least, not enough for staff to raise immediate concerns. The shelter was chaotic at times. Children were often with relatives, neighbors, or other trusted adults within the building. It wasn't a place where every movement was closely monitored. But behind the scenes, the situation had already crossed into danger. At last, the school's concerns reached a point where they could no longer wait. They contacted the DC Child and Family Services Agency for a welfare check, a routine step meant to ensure a child is safe. When investigators arrived at the shelter, searching for Relisha, they expected to find her recovering, perhaps resting, perhaps with family. But they didn't find her at all. And in that moment, The very first moment when the agencies realized she was not where she was supposed to be, quiet concern turned into something heavier. Something urgent. Something alarming. A deeper investigation began. More questions were asked. More inconsistencies emerged. Each hour brought new concerns. Where was the doctor? Why was Relisha not with her mother? Why had she spent time alone with a shelter employee? Why was there no medical record? No appointment? No verification? Piece by piece, the truth began to surface. There was no doctor. The note was fraudulent. And Relisha had not been seen for weeks. The soft rain continues tonight as we sit with this part of the story, the slow unraveling of a timeline that should have protected a child but instead allowed her to slip out of sight. The final known days of her presence were not filled with dramatic events. They were filled with quiet gaps, gentle miscommunications, and unnoticed absences. And through those gaps, a child disappeared. In the next part of our story, we'll step into the investigation that followed, a search that moved from room to room, hallway to hallway, and eventually far beyond the shelter, into a city holding its breath, hoping for answers that never came quickly enough. The rain continues its soft descent tonight, steady and unhurried, and the story moves with that same quiet pace. We are now entering the part of Relisha's case where the questions grew heavier. Not louder, just heavier, like mist settling against a window. The investigation began inside the shelter, the only place that should have felt familiar, predictable, and safe. When the Child and Family Services investigators stepped into the massive shelter building, they walked into a world that was always humming with activity. Families moved in and out of their rooms, staff members worked through their routines, children played in the hallways, and the echoes of 100 small conversations drifted through the air. It was a place full of life, but it could also swallow details, hide patterns, and mask things that should have been noticed sooner. The investigators asked a simple question. Where is Relisha? At first, the answers varied. Someone believed they had seen her earlier in the day. Another thought she was with her mother. Someone else assumed she had gone out with a relative. The building was big enough, and busy enough, that these kinds of responses didn't immediately seem unusual. Many children spent time with different family members or friends inside the shelter. It wasn't uncommon for adults to help one another with childcare. But as the investigators moved deeper into the building, the answers became less certain, less confident, and eventually, unsettlingly vague. Relisha's room was checked. Her belongings were there, but she wasn't. Her siblings were present. Her mother was present. But she was not. This was the moment when the quiet concern from the school transformed into a quiet alarm. The investigators asked about the doctor again, this Dr. Tatum, who supposedly had Relisha under medical care. And slowly, the truth began to surface. There was no doctor. There had never been a doctor. The shelter staff told investigators who Tatum really was. A janitor, a maintenance employee, someone who worked around the building and interacted with families regularly. He wasn't a medical professional of any kind. And he wasn't answering calls or present on shift anymore. As the rain continues to fall in the background, imagine the stillness that settled over the investigators as they realized the implications. It wasn't a dramatic moment, not loud, not chaotic. But it was a moment filled with a deep, uneasy quiet. They needed to find him. They needed to find her. And they needed to know how long she had been missing. Authorities searched the shelter carefully. Room by room. Hallway by hallway. Every space that Relisha might have been seen was checked, examined, and revisited. But each step only confirmed what no one wanted to accept: she wasn't there. She hadn't been for some time. Then came the next revelation. Surveillance cameras throughout the shelter had captured Tatum walking around, interacting with residents, and moving through the halls, sometimes with Relisha, in the weeks before she vanished. The footage showed small moments, nothing frantic, nothing alarming on the surface. Just a man and a child walking together, passing through common areas, sometimes leaving the building. But once investigators reviewed the timeline, something became clear. The last known time anyone outside of Tatum had seen Relisha was March 1, 2014. By the time authorities stepped into the shelter to search for her, it had been weeks. The rain outside gently blurs the edges of this moment in your mind, softening what could otherwise feel overwhelming. Let each detail come slowly, like a deep breath. Investigators began piecing together a picture of Tatum's behavior. He had gained the family's trust. He had given Relisha gifts. He had spent time alone with her. To some, he seemed generous. To others, perhaps too familiar. But in a place where so many people needed help, it was easy to mistake boundary-crossing behavior for kindness, easy to believe someone was simply trying to support a struggling child. As the search expanded within the shelter, authorities uncovered something else. Tatum had not shown up for work. He had not returned calls. And officials learned he had access to areas of the building most residents didn't: storage rooms, maintenance spaces, locked hallways. These places were checked too, but none held answers. The shelter, once simply a place of hardship and survival, had now become the starting point of a growing mystery. Police moved outward. They spoke to other residents, to staff, to anyone who might have seen Tatum leave with Relisha. Some remembered seeing them together. Some recalled conversations with him. Others couldn't be sure. The building that had once held nearly 1,000 people suddenly felt cavernous. Every unanswered question echoed through its hallways like a soft, distant sound beneath the rain. Authorities met with Relisha's mother. They asked when she had last seen her daughter. Her answers were inconsistent, shifting between different days, different explanations. Whether from confusion, stress, fear, or something else, the inconsistencies only deepened the concern. By now, the search had moved beyond the shelter. It reached into the city. Into Tatum's known routines. Into areas he was familiar with. Into the people he spoke to, the places he visited, and the quiet corners where he might have taken a vulnerable child. But in these early hours, the overwhelming emotion was not fear, it was confusion. A soft, heavy kind of confusion that left everyone wondering how a child could disappear so quietly, so gradually, without anyone realizing it soon enough. As you listen, let the rain continue to soothe your mind. The investigation was just beginning, and the city was about to wake up to a mystery that would haunt it for years to come. The rain continues to fall softly tonight, a gentle percussion on windows, leaves, and rooftops. Let your thoughts drift with it as we move beyond the shelter and into the citywide search that followed Relisha's disappearance. There are no sudden shocks here, only careful observation, quiet determination, and the slow unfolding of events. Once authorities realized that Relisha had been missing for days, and that Tatum had disappeared from his normal routines as well, a wider investigation began. Officers moved methodically, tracing every step he had taken in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The city became both a backdrop and a participant in the story, streets slick with rain, sidewalks glistening, neighborhoods quiet in the late afternoons. Teams fanned out across Washington, D.C., focusing first on places familiar to Tatum. Investigators reviewed bus routes, community centers, and parks. They knocked on doors, spoke with neighbors, and reached out to anyone who might have seen him or Relisha. Each lead was followed slowly, deliberately. Nothing was rushed. The rain provided a soft soundtrack, accompanying each moment like a muted percussion to the steady, careful work of people hoping for answers. Police officers and child welfare workers moved through areas around the shelter. They checked alleyways, storage spaces, and empty lots. Some of the paths Tatum might have taken were narrow and quiet, places where a small child could go unnoticed. And yet, as the search progressed, there were no signs of Relisha. No clues, no footprints, no evidence, just silence. Volunteers joined the search. Members of the community, concerned citizens, and local organizations came together, walking the neighborhoods with flashlights, calling out her name gently, as if hoping she would somehow answer. Their movements were slow, intentional. The rain softened the edges of the city, making it look different, more introspective, almost like a memory being revisited. At the same time, authorities began reviewing security footage from stores, bus stops, and traffic cameras. Every frame was examined carefully. Investigators looked for glimpses of Tatum and Relisha, their movements through the city, anything that could provide a lead. Some frames captured small details, a jacket, a backpack, a fleeting silhouette, but nothing concrete. The footage offered moments of hope and frustration, each one passing quietly under the persistent patter of rain. Meanwhile, social services and law enforcement began the task of notifying relatives, friends, and community members. They asked about unusual activity, sightings, or knowledge of interactions that could shed light on her whereabouts. Again, the process was slow and deliberate, with careful note-taking and attention to detail. Every conversation mattered. Every memory could be a piece of the puzzle. The rain continued as the search expanded to nearby schools, playgrounds, and transit routes. Children who had been in the shelter at the same time were gently interviewed, and adults who had interacted with Tatum were questioned calmly. Investigators were careful not to alarm anyone unnecessarily, but the seriousness of the situation grew with each passing hour. One by one, the pieces of Tatum's routine came into focus. Where he worked. Where he went to get supplies. Where he had interactions with the community. Yet Relisha's absence remained a constant, quiet shadow over every step of the investigation. She had vanished without a trace, leaving a void that echoed through the city streets, corridors, and neighborhoods. And even in the midst of all the activity, the rain kept falling, masking footsteps and softening the edges of reality. At the shelter, the atmosphere was heavy but subdued. Staff members wondered how things had gone unnoticed for so long. Families questioned their own assumptions. The realization that a child had disappeared under their watch was a soft, slow kind of shock, one that didn't scream, but settled like fog over a familiar landscape. As the search stretched over days, investigators coordinated with multiple agencies, law enforcement, child protective services, and community groups. The city's resources were directed toward one shared goal: to find Relisha. The pace remained careful, methodical, and measured. There were no sudden rushes, no dramatic chases, just quiet persistence. Throughout the search, hope and anxiety mingled. Every unconfirmed sighting created a ripple of cautious optimism. Every dead end created another layer of quiet worry. Rainy afternoons bled into misty mornings, and investigators followed every possible lead, retracing Tatum's and Relisha's last known movements with steady, patient care. As we listen, let the rain guide your thoughts. Imagine investigators moving slowly through neighborhoods, pausing to observe, noting details others might miss. Imagine volunteers walking streets, flashlights in hand, calling her name gently into the night. The city is vast, but the search is intentional, measured, and filled with human concern. Even as days passed, there were moments of small victories, a memory recalled by a neighbor, a partial sighting caught on camera. And moments of despair, when hope seemed to slip quietly away like mist. Each moment was treated with care, each action deliberate. And through it all, the rain continued to fall, offering a soft, persistent rhythm that matched the careful pace of the search itself. Though the initial search did not immediately reveal her location, it set the stage for the growing awareness that this was more than a temporary absence. The investigation now had the attention of the city. And though the details remained uncertain, one thing was clear: Relisha Rudd had disappeared from the lives of those who loved her, and finding her, understanding what had happened, would require patience, persistence, and a careful unraveling of events that stretched beyond the walls of the shelter. As the rain continues tonight, allow your mind to rest on the quiet diligence of this search. The people involved moved with intention, with empathy, and with hope. They combed through neighborhoods, revisited familiar streets, and followed every thread they could find, not in panic, but in steady, deliberate pursuit of a missing child. And as you breathe, let the story, and the rain, settle around you. The search efforts had only just begun, and the quiet mystery of Relisha Rudd's disappearance was about to deepen further, drawing investigators, family, and the city into a complex, solemn, and ongoing journey. The rain outside continues its quiet, rhythmic patter, each drop a soft, steady reminder of the calm persistence of nature. And now, as the search extended beyond the shelter and through the city, authorities began to piece together what had really happened. Their discoveries were slow, careful, methodical, never rushed, never sensationalized, just a quiet uncovering of the facts. At first, the picture was incomplete. Investigators had Relish's last known movements, Tatum's routines, and fragments of information from shelter staff and neighbors. They reviewed each piece with precision, slowly fitting it together like puzzle pieces. And as they did, troubling patterns began to emerge. One of the first key discoveries was the realization that Tatum had been deceptive. The doctor he claimed to be was fictitious, a false identity created to gain trust. Investigators traced the origin of the note sent to the school, the one claiming Relisha was under medical care, and confirmed it had been fabricated. There was no appointment, no medical professional involved. The calm, measured pace of the investigation revealed this subtle deceit, layer by layer. Authorities also discovered that Tatum had spent considerable time with Relisha before her disappearance. Surveillance footage from the shelter and nearby streets captured him interacting with her, sometimes gently guiding her, sometimes offering small gifts. In public, he appeared normal, almost kind. But the investigators' careful review highlighted the inconsistencies, moments where boundaries had been crossed, and where trust had been misused. As investigators dug deeper, they found evidence that Tatum had planned carefully. His movements in the weeks prior to Relish's disappearance suggested a premeditated pattern, rather than a spontaneous act. Yet there were no immediate clues to her location. Each day of the search revealed nothing concrete. And still, the rain continued outside, softening the edges of this slowly unfolding story. Within the shelter, staff members were questioned in detail. Authorities discovered gaps in oversight, places where monitoring had been insufficient, and moments when small warnings had been overlooked. These findings were not dramatic in a sensational way, but they were important. Each detail helped authorities understand how a child could vanish quietly in a busy, crowded environment. Further investigation revealed that Tatum had left the shelter without any notice. His absence coincided with the last time Relisha was seen. Authorities traced his known locations, spoke with acquaintances, and reviewed any transactions he had made. Each step revealed fragments of his activities, where he had gone, who he had interacted with, and what opportunities he had had to be alone with the child. Yet, despite this painstaking work, there was no sign of Relisha. In the days that followed, Tatum's own situation began to unravel. Investigators discovered that he had faced personal and legal difficulties. There were indications that he was under stress, living with secrets that would soon catch up with him. The combination of these factors painted a picture of a man whose actions would have serious consequences, but for now, the calm, persistent search for Relisha continued. The city itself became a part of the investigation. Police and social services moved through neighborhoods methodically, retracing steps, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing video footage. Each lead was followed with patience, every discrepancy noted. The rain continued, soft and unending, as if the city itself was keeping vigil, each drop a quiet witness to the unfolding story. And then, investigators made a sobering discovery: Tatum had died by suicide. While the circumstances were tragic, it complicated the case further. With him gone, many of the answers that authorities had hoped for would never be fully revealed. Relisha's whereabouts remained unknown, and the questions surrounding her disappearance lingered in the quiet spaces of the city, unanswered, unresolved, yet deeply felt by all who had been involved. Despite these grim discoveries, investigators remained committed. They continued to examine every possible lead, every scrap of information, and every detail that could shed light on the situation. Each moment was approached with care, method, and an almost meditative patience, mirroring the gentle rain that had accompanied much of the search. Through it all, the investigators' work highlighted both the fragility and the resilience of human systems. The gaps that allowed a child to go missing were real, but so was the dedication of those who tried to find her. The story of Relisha Rudd became a quiet reminder of how vigilance, care, and attention are essential in protecting the most vulnerable among us, and how, even in the calmest circumstances, vigilance must never falter. As you listen, allow the rain to continue its soft rhythm. Let the story unfold gently in your mind. Relisha's disappearance remains unresolved, but the careful, deliberate work of authorities reflects the human commitment to truth, safety, and remembrance. Every detail discovered, every lead followed, and every step taken by investigators speaks to the patient, quiet pursuit of answers, a pursuit that continues even in the absence of closure. And now, as the rain settles into a soft whisper, take a slow, deep breath. Imagine investigators moving quietly through streets, revisiting neighborhoods, examining details with care, all in the hope of finding her. This chapter may be heavy, but it is told softly, calmly, and with respect. In the next part, we will explore theories and possibilities, continuing to honor the story of Relisha Rudd, and maintaining the gentle, sleep-friendly tone that allows you to drift along with the narrative. The rain continues softly tonight, a quiet companion to our story. Its steady rhythm encourages reflection and calm as we move into the part of the story where questions arise. The possibilities that investigators and the public considered as they tried to understand what might have happened to Relisha Rudd. We approach this carefully, gently, without speculation meant to frighten, but with curiosity and respect for the child at the center of this mystery. Even with the facts investigators had uncovered, the full picture of what happened remained elusive. Relisha had vanished quietly, and Tatum's death left key answers forever out of reach. Still, investigators considered several possibilities, examining each with patience and care. Let us walk through them slowly, step by step. One theory is the concern of exploitation, the danger that a vulnerable child might encounter someone who intends to harm or manipulate them. Investigators looked carefully at Tatum's role in Relisha's life and the trust he had built. He had access to her, familiarity, and moments alone. While authorities could not know every detail, this theory reminded them of the fragile lines of trust in vulnerable communities, and the importance of adult oversight. Another possibility was the idea of mistaken trust. Relisha's mother and family had allowed her to spend time with someone they believed was helping. In environments where families face hardship, children often rely on the adults around them for guidance and safety. Mistaken trust can occur quietly, with no dramatic warning signs, until, tragically, it is too late. This theory does not assign blame harshly, but acknowledges that human error and vulnerability can intersect in ways that put children at risk. Some considered the chance of abduction by someone unknown an unfortunate and rare scenario, but one that authorities could not ignore. Investigators checked every lead, spoke to witnesses, and followed every report. The city was examined systematically, from streets to transit routes, in hopes of discovering any trace that might indicate Relisha had been taken elsewhere. Each small lead was pursued methodically, with care, patience, and dedication. There was also reflection on the environment itself, the shelter, its routines, and its oversight. Large facilities, especially those with hundreds of residents, can make it challenging to track every movement. Investigators noted how patterns of care, security, and attention could be disrupted, even unintentionally. This perspective was not a criticism, but a gentle reminder that even well-meaning systems can have gaps, and that awareness and vigilance are essential. At the same time, authorities considered the less likely, but still possible, scenario of a runaway situation. Could Relisha have left voluntarily? Her personality and background suggested it was unlikely, but every possibility, however small, was explored. The investigation was thorough, cautious, and deliberate, treating even unlikely ideas with respect, because every piece of the puzzle mattered. Throughout these considerations, investigators moved slowly, carefully, as the rain continued outside. Each theory was examined, questioned, and documented. No assumptions were made lightly. And while the answers remained incomplete, the pursuit of understanding continued, reflecting both the difficulty and the humanity of trying to protect vulnerable children. As we reflect, the rain serves as a metaphor for the persistence of hope. Each drop falls quietly, consistently, reminding us that even in uncertainty, people continue to care, to search, and to remember. Relish's story prompted discussions about safety, supervision, and community awareness, highlighting the need for vigilance in the most subtle, ordinary moments of daily life. In thinking about these possibilities, it is important to remember the heart of the story: a young girl with a full life, a bright smile, and a world of potential. Each theory is not about blame or judgment, but about understanding how such a disappearance could occur, and how systems and communities can respond with compassion and care. Even now, years later, the unanswered questions remain, quiet yet persistent. They remind us of the fragility of childhood, the importance of attentive care, and the human responsibility to watch over one another. And yet, they also reflect the dedication of those who searched, investigated, and tried to bring clarity to a situation that had no easy answers. As you listen, let your mind wander gently through these reflections. There is no rush, no urgency. The rain outside continues to fall softly, offering calm as we consider the theories and possibilities. Each one is a step in understanding, a small light illuminating a path through uncertainty, and a reminder that human effort continues even when the outcome is unknown. We do not end this chapter with answers, because there are none. Instead, we let the story rest gently in our minds, with compassion, reflection, and quiet awareness. Relisha Rudd's disappearance remains a solemn reminder of the need for vigilance, empathy, and care. Lessons carried softly like the rain that continues to fall outside. And now, as the night deepens, we will move into the final part of our story, legacy and impact, reflecting on how her story has influenced the community, prompted awareness, and left a quiet, lasting imprint on the hearts of those who remember her. The rain continues tonight, falling in soft, steady drops, a quiet reminder of patience and reflection. As we move into the final part of Relisha Rudd's story, we shift our focus from the search and the unanswered questions to the legacy she left behind, the impact of her disappearance, and the gentle, enduring memory of her life. Even though Relisha was only 8 years old when she vanished, her story resonated deeply across Washington, D.C., and beyond. Families, neighbors, and community members were shaken by the realization that a child could disappear so quietly, and that even the smallest gaps in care or trust could have profound consequences. The city began to take notice. Policies were revisited, safety measures were strengthened, and organizations focused more intently on protecting vulnerable children. Her story became a catalyst for change. A quiet reminder that children deserve vigilant care, compassionate oversight, and unwavering attention. Community members also came together in new ways. Vigils were held in her honor, drawing families, friends, and strangers alike who wanted to acknowledge the loss, express hope, and show support for those affected. These gatherings were quiet, solemn, and filled with respect. People standing together in the rain or under streetlights, holding candles, and remembering a child whose life, though brief, had touched many hearts. Even the softest presence, a gentle word, or a quiet thought for Relisha became a part of her enduring legacy. Her teachers, who had first noticed her absences, spoke about her with care and remembrance. Friends and family shared stories of her laughter, her kindness, and her curiosity. These memories, though tinged with sadness, offered a glimpse into the life of a child who deserved joy, stability, and love. Each recollection acted as a small lantern in the darkness, keeping her memory alive and guiding others to recognize the value of every child's life. The disappearance of Relisha Rudd also prompted wider conversations about community awareness. How can neighbors, schools, and families work together to ensure that vulnerable children are noticed, protected, and supported? What systems can be put in place to prevent similar tragedies? These discussions, though difficult, were a reflection of the quiet determination to learn from loss and to take preventive action, to transform grief into vigilance, sadness into proactive care. And while many of the answers remain unknown, there is a sense of gentle continuity. Relisha's story continues to be told, not with sensationalism or fear, but with thoughtfulness and compassion. Each telling is a reminder that even in the absence of closure, awareness and empathy can grow. Her story encourages reflection on how every child's life is precious, and how communities, families, and institutions can play a role in keeping them safe. As the rain taps softly against your window or the background of this story, allow your mind to rest on these reflections. Imagine the gentle ripples of candlelight at vigils, the quiet conversations of neighbors sharing memories, the deliberate steps of investigators, and the calm, measured ways that communities have sought to learn and grow from tragedy. These are the lasting imprints of Relish Arud's life, quiet, thoughtful, and enduring. Take a deep breath and let the rain guide your thoughts. Feel its gentle rhythm syncing with your heartbeat. Allow yourself to hold both sadness and hope together. Sadness for what was lost, and hope in the care and vigilance her story inspires. Reflect on the way people can come together, slowly and calmly, to protect one another, even when the world feels uncertain. As you drift deeper into the quiet of the night, remember that stories like this do not end abruptly. They linger softly, like the memory of a gentle rain after a long day. Relish Arud's story is one of caution, compassion, and reflection. A reminder that children matter, that vigilance matters, and that even the smallest acts of care can ripple outward in meaningful ways. Let your mind settle with the rain. Picture a calm street in Washington, D.C., softly wet, quiet, and reflective. Imagine her life as a series of small, bright moments remembered by those who loved her, and by strangers touched by her story. Hold this vision gently, allowing it to calm your thoughts and ease your mind. Tonight, we leave the story here. Not with full answers, but with a sense of peace, reflection, and quiet remembrance. Let the rain carry your thoughts, letting them drift slowly as you rest. Relish Arud is remembered, her legacy quietly lives on, and the world carries forward with the awareness, care, and compassion inspired by her story. Take one final, slow breath, feel the weight of the day lift, and allow the gentle rhythm of the rain to guide you toward rest, calm, and peace. Story 2. Take a deep breath, and settle in. Let your body relax and your mind slow down. The rain is falling softly tonight, each drop a gentle rhythm guiding you into calm. If you're ready, we'll walk through a story together, a story that is both tragic and reflective, told gently, with care. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching or listening from tonight. Are you tuning in from the United States, Europe, or somewhere farther away? Drop a note in the comments. It's always comforting to see how far the quiet community of listeners stretches. And if you enjoy these soft, slow-paced true crime stories accompanied by gentle rain sounds, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. It helps more people discover stories told respectfully and peacefully. Tonight, we remember a young woman named Faith Hedgepeth. She was vibrant, full of promise, and stepping into adulthood with her whole life ahead of her. A college student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Faith had dreams, friendships, and a spirit that touched those around her. She was intelligent, kind, and full of curiosity, someone whose presence made the world a little brighter. It's important, as we listen together tonight, to hold on to that image of Faith, not the tragedy, not the headlines, but the life, the warmth, the laughter that she carried with her. This is a story told gently, for reflection and understanding, with respect for her memory. The events we'll explore unfolded in September of 2012. A single night changed the lives of her family, friends, and community forever. But before we reach that night, we'll take a moment to understand Faith's world, her life, her college experiences, and the people she loved. We'll move slowly, so you can drift comfortably alongside the story, letting the rain soothe your mind. As you listen, allow the rhythm of the rain to match your breathing. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Let the gentle sound fill the space around you, creating a calm backdrop for this quiet reflection. You do not need to hold tension or fear. This story will be told with care, like a memory unfolding softly in the night. Faith was more than a name in a news report. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a student, someone with dreams, ambitions, and the kind of spirit that inspires others. On campus, she was known for her intelligence, her involvement in student life, and her commitment to her community. She studied, laughed with friends, and moved through her world with a quiet confidence that drew people toward her. That night, however, was different. It began like any other, the routine of a young college student, the city lights casting a gentle glow over Chapel Hill, the faint hum of distant traffic blending with the natural sounds of the night. Nothing suggested the tragedy that was about to unfold. And yet, even in the calm, the quiet rhythm of ordinary life was interrupted. Tonight, we are not here to sensationalize. We are here to remember, to reflect, and to understand. We are here to honor Faith's life and acknowledge the mystery that followed. This story is meant to be absorbed slowly, piece by piece, letting each detail settle gently in your mind, accompanied by the soothing cadence of rain. As you listen, think of the quiet streets of Chapel Hill, the gentle rustling of leaves in the evening breeze, the distant lights glowing softly through windows. Imagine Faith moving through that world, a young woman full of potential, unaware of the events that would change everything. Let the rain carry your thoughts and keep your mind calm, even as we approach the difficult moments of this story. Take another slow breath, feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders, and allow the soft rhythm of the rain to guide you into the next part of Faith's story. Together, we will explore her life, her experiences, and the mystery surrounding her untimely death, gently, respectfully, and with care. The rain continues softly outside, falling in gentle, rhythmic drops, filling the night with a calm, steady cadence. Let your thoughts drift along with it as we move into the early life of Faith Hedgepeth, a young woman whose story, though tragic, begins with warmth, promise, and everyday moments we can reflect on gently. Faith was born and raised in Greenville, North Carolina. From an early age, she was known for her intelligence, her curiosity, and the quiet way she could light up a room with a smile. Family and friends described her as kind, caring, and thoughtful. Someone who made an impression simply by being present. These qualities would stay with her as she grew, shaping the person she became. At school, Faith excelled academically. She had a natural aptitude for learning and a deep love for knowledge. Teachers remembered her attentiveness, her thoughtfulness in discussions, and her willingness to help others when they needed it. She was not only intelligent but compassionate, a combination that drew people to her. Even in her early years, there was a sense that Faith had a future filled with potential, a life that could impact others in meaningful ways. Outside the classroom, Faith enjoyed spending time with her family and friends. She had a circle of close friends who admired her honesty, her sense of humor, and her gentle nature. They shared small joys, walks in the neighborhood, quiet conversations, laughter over shared jokes, and evenings spent enjoying each other's company. These everyday moments, so ordinary yet so precious, paint a picture of a young woman whose life was full of light and connection. Faith also had personal interests that reflected her creativity and curiosity. She loved music and had a fondness for songs that resonated with her emotions. She was thoughtful and reflective, someone who found beauty in simple things, a quiet evening, a gentle breeze, or the rhythmic sound of rainfall. These small details were a part of her character, and they shaped the way she interacted with the world around her. Her family played an important role in her upbringing. They provided support, guidance, and love, helping her navigate the challenges of growing up. Her parents and siblings described her as a bright presence in their lives, someone whose laughter and warmth made even difficult days lighter. The bonds she shared with her family were strong, and they would later become a source of resilience during the tragedy that unfolded. Faith's academic journey led her to East Carolina University for part of her early college life before she transferred to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she pursued her studies with determination. She was a dedicated student, focusing on her goals and building a foundation for her future. College was a time of growth, exploration, and new experiences, friendships, opportunities, and the challenges that come with newfound independence. Even in the campus environment, Faith maintained the qualities that defined her early life. She was thoughtful in her interactions, caring toward her peers, and attentive in her studies. She formed friendships that would last, participated in campus life, and continued to cultivate the personal interests that brought her joy. Her life was vibrant, filled with possibilities and the promise of what lay ahead. It's important, as we remember this early part of her story, to hold on to these reflections gently. Faith was more than the circumstances of her death. She was a young woman with dreams, laughter, and a presence that left an imprint on those around her. These quiet details, her intelligence, her kindness, her curiosity, are what we carry forward as we tell her story. The rhythm of the rain tonight is a companion to this reflection, softening the edges of reality and allowing us to focus on the gentle, everyday moments of her life. Imagine her walking through campus, books in hand, sunlight glinting softly through the trees. Imagine her laughing quietly with a friend, listening intently to a conversation, or simply pausing to enjoy a moment of peace. These are the images that remind us of her humanity and the life she lived before tragedy intervened. Even in her early years, Faith showed resilience, grace, and intelligence. She faced the normal challenges of growing up with quiet determination, balancing school, family, and personal growth. Her story in these formative years is not about fear or tragedy, but about a young woman stepping forward into the world with promise, curiosity, and warmth. As the rain continues its gentle patter tonight, allow your mind to rest on these moments. Picture the quiet streets of Greenville, North Carolina, the familiar sounds of home, the laughter of friends, and the nurturing presence of her family. Faith's early life is a reflection of potential, a reminder that every individual carries a story filled with light, connection, and hope. Take a slow breath, letting the rhythm of the rain match your heartbeat. Allow the calm of the evening to guide your thoughts as we prepare to move into the next part of Faith Hedgepeth's story. Her college life and the circumstances leading up to that fateful night. The rain continues softly outside, a steady, gentle rhythm that seems to quiet the world around us. Let your mind follow its pace as we enter the next chapter of Faith Hedgepeth's story, her life at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the routines, the friendships, and the moments that defined her final days. Faith arrived at UNC Chapel Hill with ambition and hope. College was a new chapter in her life, full of opportunities to learn, grow, and connect with others. She approached her studies with determination, choosing courses that challenged her and expanded her understanding of the world. Professors remembered her as attentive, thoughtful, and eager to engage in discussions, a student who cared deeply about her learning and the people around her. Beyond the classroom, Faith's life was filled with friendships that brought her laughter and support. She formed bonds with classmates who shared her interests and values. Together, they navigated the rhythms of college life, long walks across campus, late-night study sessions, quiet conversations over coffee, and moments of shared joy and encouragement. Faith had a natural warmth that drew people to her, and she nurtured these connections with care. Her days followed a predictable, comforting rhythm. Attending classes, participating in campus activities, spending time with friends, and returning to her dormitory in the evenings. Life at college brought new responsibilities, but also freedom and independence. Faith embraced these changes with quiet confidence, navigating the balance between studies, social life, and personal growth. Even in her routines, there were small details that spoke to her character. She would pause to appreciate a sunny afternoon on the quad, listen attentively when a friend spoke, and carry herself with a calm, reflective presence. Her laughter was gentle but genuine, her curiosity evident in the questions she asked and the interest she showed in those around her. These seemingly ordinary moments are the ones that now stand out, forming a picture of a young woman fully engaged in life. During this time, Faith also began to explore her personal interests more deeply. She loved music and often listened to songs that resonated with her moods or helped her focus. She enjoyed quiet evenings in her dorm room, reading or reflecting on her goals. These moments, though private, were part of the gentle rhythm of her life, times of calm and thoughtfulness that balanced the busy pace of college. It was in this setting of daily routine and quiet reflection that the events leading up to her death would begin to unfold. There were ordinary days filled with classes, meals, and conversations, days that seemed unremarkable, yet each held the potential for moments that would later be remembered with sorrow and reflection. Faith's dorm life was typical of a college student, with the usual challenges of managing responsibilities, navigating social dynamics, and maintaining personal safety. She had friends she trusted and people she could rely on, but as is often the case in large campuses, there were also unknowns and risks in her environment. This was a world where vigilance and awareness were necessary, even amidst the familiarity of routines and friendships. In the evenings, Faith often returned to her room quietly, listening to the faint sounds of the campus at night, the distant footsteps of students, the hum of traffic, and the gentle whisper of leaves in the breeze. The rain outside tonight reminds us of that calm and quiet rhythm, the same rhythm that accompanied her life even as circumstances began to change in ways she could not foresee. As the story moves closer to the night of the tragedy, it's important to maintain the gentle, reflective tone. We remember Faith as a young woman full of promise, not just the events of that evening. Her intelligence, warmth, and curiosity remain central to her story, offering a soft contrast to the sorrow that would follow. Faith's life at college demonstrates both her independence and her connection to others. She was careful, thoughtful, and engaged in her environment, yet like many students, she was navigating a world that was both familiar and new. The ordinary moments of daily life, studying in the library, walking across campus, sharing a laugh with friends, all form the tapestry of her final weeks, highlighting her humanity and the quiet dignity of her routine. As you listen, let the rain outside mirror the rhythm of her life. Gentle, steady, and unhurried. Each drop reminds us of her presence, her laughter, and her thoughtful nature. Allow yourself to breathe slowly, letting the calm persist as we prepare to move into the next part of her story, the discovery of the crime, told with care, reflection, and continued rain-soothing ambience. The rain continues softly tonight, a steady, soothing rhythm that mirrors the gentle unfolding of this story. As we move into the next chapter, we approach the moment when Faith Hedgepeth's life was tragically interrupted, the discovery of her death. Even here, the story will be told carefully, respectfully, and slowly, allowing the mind to remain calm and reflective. It was a quiet night in September 2012 when Faith's body was discovered in her off-campus apartment in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, the familiar sounds of traffic and distant conversation muted beneath the persistent rainfall. The investigation began with the same calm, methodical steps that law enforcement always follows, not in haste, but with care, attention, and precision. Police officers arrived at the scene, moving deliberately, assessing the apartment and its surroundings. Their approach was systematic, aiming to preserve evidence, gather information, and ensure that every detail was noted. The rain outside offered a gentle accompaniment to their measured work, a quiet backdrop that softened the edges of an otherwise solemn scene. Authorities began by securing the apartment and speaking with those close to Faith, friends, roommates, and family members. Each conversation was approached with patience and respect. Investigators asked about her routines, her recent activities, and any changes that might have seemed unusual. These inquiries were quiet but important, forming the foundation for understanding the circumstances surrounding her death. Neighbors were also interviewed. Officers walked along the wet streets, knocking on doors, speaking to those who might have seen something out of the ordinary, and listening carefully to every detail. Even the smallest observations, a light on in a window, a passing figure, a sound in the night, could provide valuable context. The rain softened each step, each sound, creating a calm, measured pace to the investigation. Evidence was collected thoughtfully. Forensic specialists moved slowly, examining the apartment, noting details, and documenting everything with precision. Their work was quiet, methodical, and deliberate. Every action reflected the care necessary to understand what had occurred, and every observation contributed to the careful reconstruction of events. The discovery of Faith's death was a moment of profound sorrow for her family and friends. Yet even in their grief, there was a calm recognition of the importance of truth and understanding. Investigators worked with them gently, explaining steps, answering questions, and ensuring that their process respected both Faith's life and the feelings of those she loved. Police also began reviewing nearby surveillance cameras, traffic footage, and any digital records that might provide insight into the circumstances leading up to her death. This step was conducted quietly, systematically, and without sensationalism, focusing solely on uncovering factual details. The rain outside mirrored the careful persistence of the investigators, soft, steady, and unhurried. In the early hours, authorities pieced together the last known movements of Faith. Friends recalled their last conversations with her, casual interactions in the dorms and on campus, and the normal routines of a college student's life. Each recollection was considered carefully, forming a timeline that would guide further investigation. Even the most ordinary details, what she wore, where she ate, how she spent her evening, were recorded with care, each one a thread in the larger picture. Throughout the process, there was a strong emphasis on respect and reflection. The focus was on understanding, not sensationalizing, on honoring Faith's life, not dwelling on the tragic circumstances. Investigators maintained a steady, calm approach, allowing the rain to continue its gentle rhythm as a companion to their meticulous work. The city of Chapel Hill itself seemed to respond to the gravity of the situation. Streets that were normally busy were quieter, communities more attentive, neighbors more aware. The presence of law enforcement, combined with the soft, persistent rainfall, created an atmosphere of solemn reflection. People moved slowly, their minds turning gently to thoughts of Faith and the life she had lived. By the end of the night, investigators had established a foundational understanding of the scene and the timeline. They had gathered statements, documented evidence, and begun the careful process of reconstruction. While answers were not immediate, each step was deliberate, measured, and thoughtful, a reflection of the care with which they approached this difficult work. As you listen, allow the rain outside to guide your thoughts. Imagine the calm diligence of investigators, the quiet concern of family and friends, and the reflective nature of a community grappling with loss. The pace is slow, the tone gentle, and the focus is on remembrance, understanding, and the careful unraveling of events. Faith Hedgepeth's life, full of promise and quiet beauty, had been interrupted. But in this slow, deliberate approach, her story is preserved with care, and the dedication of investigators ensures that her memory is honored. The rain continues to fall softly, carrying both sorrow and reflection, and creating space for the mind to remain calm and contemplative. As we prepare to move into the next part of the story, the investigation, let the soft rhythm of the rain guide your breathing. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly, and allow the steady cadence of the night to carry you gently forward. The rain continues tonight, soft and steady, creating a gentle rhythm that mirrors the careful steps of investigators in the days following Faith Hedgepeth's death. Let your thoughts move slowly with it, as we follow the calm, methodical process of law enforcement, who approached the case with patience, precision, and respect. From the moment the discovery was made, investigators treated the scene with utmost care. Officers documented the apartment, photographed details, and collected evidence systematically. Every item, every surface, every subtle clue was considered carefully. The rain outside provided a quiet, reflective background, softening the edges of a reality that was both tragic and complex. Authorities began by interviewing Faith's family and close friends. These conversations were gentle, filled with compassion, and conducted with the aim of understanding her life, routines, and recent experiences. Each recollection was noted meticulously, from casual interactions to more personal moments, forming a clearer picture of her last days. Investigators approached every question with patience, listening closely to ensure nothing was overlooked. At the same time, officers spoke with campus staff and residents of the surrounding area. Dorm supervisors, neighbors, and local shopkeepers were asked about unusual activity, strangers in the area, or anything that might provide a clue. Investigators moved methodically, walking streets, checking lighting, and noting patterns. The soft patter of rain accompanied each step, echoing the slow, deliberate pace of the inquiry. Forensic specialists examined the apartment and its surroundings with calm precision. They documented evidence without rushing, taking time to analyze every detail carefully. Their work was quiet but thorough, fingerprints, traces of movement, and subtle indications of activity were all considered. Each observation was part of a broader process, a careful puzzle that investigators sought to assemble piece by piece. Digital records were another essential part of the investigation. Phones, social media accounts, and electronic communications were reviewed carefully. Investigators looked for patterns, timelines, and connections, all while maintaining a calm, measured approach. The goal was to uncover information gently, without speculation, ensuring that every step respected the memory of Faith and the integrity of the process. The investigators also considered the broader environment. UNC Chapel Hill is a vibrant campus, filled with activity and movement. Students and faculty were interviewed about their routines, noting when and where Faith had been seen. Security footage from nearby buildings and streets was reviewed methodically, frame by frame. The rain outside softened sounds, muted distant city noises, and allowed the team to work in a focused, reflective manner. At times, investigators encountered dead ends, leads that provided no answers, recollections that were incomplete, or footage that yielded no additional information. Each of these moments was met with patience, as they methodically explored every alternative possibility. In complex investigations, the calm, deliberate pace is essential. The rain outside tonight mirrors this persistence, steady, unhurried, and unwavering. As the days progressed, law enforcement also coordinated with state and federal agencies. The goal was to combine expertise, resources, and experience in a methodical pursuit of clarity. Each specialist contributed knowledge in forensic analysis, behavioral profiling, and investigative strategy. Their combined efforts created a network of careful, reflective inquiry, designed to uncover the truth as gently and thoroughly as possible. Throughout the investigation, community support played a quiet but meaningful role. Friends, neighbors, and local organizations provided information, comfort, and perspective. Their cooperation, offered in moments of calm reflection rather than urgency, contributed to the investigators' understanding of Faith's life and the circumstances surrounding her death. Even small observations, a remembered conversation, a noted pattern, or an unusual encounter, were woven into the careful fabric of the inquiry. The investigation also emphasized the importance of respecting privacy and maintaining discretion. Investigators avoided speculation, focused on facts, and approached every interview and observation with empathy. This calm, measured approach allowed the process to proceed without sensationalism, honoring Faith's memory while pursuing justice. As you listen tonight, imagine investigators moving slowly through campus, checking rooms, walking quiet streets, and reviewing documents with care. Picture them pausing to reflect, consulting with colleagues, and documenting each detail thoughtfully. The rain outside accompanies them, its gentle rhythm reflecting the patience and dedication of the process. Faith Hedgepeth's case became a complex puzzle. The methodical work of investigators, paired with the quiet cooperation of friends, family, and the community, gradually began to build a picture of the events surrounding her death. Though answers would not come immediately, the persistence, care, and dedication of those involved ensured that every possibility was explored thoughtfully. Allow the rain outside to carry your thoughts and synchronize your breathing. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Feel the calm rhythm of the night and the steady diligence of those seeking understanding. Each small step, each careful observation, and each reflection adds to the ongoing pursuit of clarity and remembrance. The investigation of Faith Hedgepeth was not about drama or fear. It was about patience, reflection, and meticulous care. The gentle rain and the steady pace of investigators mirror this approach, slow, deliberate, and respectful. And as the story continues, we move next into theories and suspects, exploring the possible circumstances surrounding the case, told in the same calm, reflective tone suitable for sleep and reflection. The rain continues softly tonight, a quiet companion as we explore the thoughts and possibilities that investigators considered in the aftermath of Faith Hedgepeth's tragic death. Each theory was examined with care, patience, and respect, never sensationalized, but approached as a methodical way to understand the circumstances and search for answers. Investigators considered several possibilities in their effort to piece together what had happened. One early theory focused on people in Faith's immediate circle. Friends, acquaintances, and classmates were questioned gently, aiming to uncover patterns, habits, or interactions that might shed light on the events leading up to her death. Each conversation was approached with patience and care, and every detail was documented meticulously. Another line of inquiry considered potential intruders or unknown individuals who might have had access to the apartment. Officers reviewed security footage, conducted neighborhood canvasses, and examined patterns of movement around the area. Even small observations, a car parked for an unusual period, a figure passing by at an odd hour, were noted carefully. The rhythm of the rain outside matched the patience of the investigation, slow, consistent, and reflective. Behavioral experts were also consulted, providing insight into possible motives and circumstances. They analyzed the case in a calm, methodical manner, considering factors such as patterns of interaction, timing, and environmental context. These analyses were not used to speculate wildly, but to guide investigators in understanding plausible scenarios and avenues for further exploration. Investigators also explored the broader environment of Faith's life, her college community, social circles, and routines. Every aspect of her daily life was reviewed carefully, from classroom schedules to casual meetings with friends. Each interaction was considered thoughtfully, understanding that even seemingly ordinary details could provide subtle clues. At the same time, authorities ruled out certain possibilities. The process of elimination was gradual, methodical, and deliberate, ensuring that every potential lead was given careful attention. This approach emphasized patience, reflection, and thoroughness, aligning with the gentle, measured pace of a story told for quiet contemplation. As new information emerged, investigators assessed potential suspects, always mindful of the need to approach the matter respectfully. Background checks, interviews, and thorough review of past interactions were conducted slowly and carefully. Each step of the process mirrored the rhythm of the rain outside, steady, reflective, and persistent. Community members were also a quiet but essential part of the process. Tips, observations, and recollections from neighbors and classmates provided insights that helped refine the direction of the investigation. Even small details, a remembered conversation, a visit, or a passing remark, contributed to a larger understanding of the case. While some theories were more likely than others, investigators maintained a calm, methodical approach. Each possibility was explored with diligence, patience, and empathy. The goal was never to create fear or anxiety, but to seek understanding, clarity, and eventually, justice. During this phase, law enforcement emphasized transparency and care. Statements to the public were measured, factual, and respectful. The investigation's progress was shared carefully, without sensationalism, reflecting both the seriousness of the case and the need to honor Faith's memory. The rain outside continued to fall, soft and persistent, a companion to the calm, steady pace of inquiry. Through it all, investigators were guided by a central principle: understanding the truth with patience and respect. Every theory, every consideration, and every potential lead was part of a careful process, one that honored Faith's life while seeking answers. The quiet persistence of the rain mirrors this dedication, consistent, reflective, and thoughtful. As you listen, imagine the investigators reviewing notes, speaking gently with witnesses, and piecing together subtle patterns. Picture the calm streets of Chapel Hill at night, with the soft glow of streetlights reflecting off rain-slicked sidewalks, and the careful, deliberate steps of those seeking clarity. Each small observation, every meticulous review, and each careful conversation contributes to the larger story, quietly moving toward understanding. Faith Hedgepeth's case remains complex, with questions that are difficult to answer. Yet the careful, methodical approach of law enforcement, combined with the insights of friends, family, and the community, ensures that her story is honored thoughtfully. The rain continues, guiding both the mind and the narrative gently forward. The rain continues tonight, gentle and steady, creating a reflective backdrop as we move into the chapter of Faith Hedgepeth's story focused on legal proceedings and the steps taken toward understanding and justice. Let your thoughts drift with the rhythm of the rainfall, allowing the calm of the night to accompany this part of the story. Following the investigation, law enforcement worked closely with prosecutors to review evidence and determine the next steps. The goal was always to proceed thoughtfully, patiently, and methodically, ensuring that any actions taken were based on thorough examination and careful consideration. Every detail was revisited, every lead assessed, and every observation considered in the context of building a clear understanding. When a suspect is identified in a complex case, authorities move cautiously. They coordinate with legal teams, gather documentation, and ensure that procedures are followed precisely. This approach is deliberate and reflective, much like the gentle rainfall outside, allowing for accuracy and careful preparation at each stage. During this period, family members and the community remained closely involved. While coping with grief, they provided information, recollections, and insights that helped guide investigators and prosecutors. These contributions, offered quietly and thoughtfully, played a meaningful role in shaping the legal process. Their patience and willingness to participate calmly mirrored the measured pace of the investigation itself. Court proceedings, when they occur, are structured and methodical. Every hearing, filing, and review is documented meticulously, ensuring that the case moves forward in an orderly and respectful manner. Legal teams work to balance the pursuit of justice with the careful preservation of evidence, witness accounts, and factual findings. The calm rhythm of the rain outside provides a reflective space as we consider these steps, allowing the mind to remain gentle and contemplative. In Faith's case, prosecutors approached the matter with the same care and diligence. They evaluated evidence from the investigation, worked with forensic specialists, and consulted with experts in various fields. Each step was deliberate, ensuring that the legal process proceeded with integrity, respect, and patience. There was no rush, only the steady progression toward clarity and accountability. Throughout the legal process, statements released to the public were measured, factual, and careful. Authorities avoided speculation and sensationalism, focusing instead on delivering information that was accurate and respectful. This approach maintained the dignity of Faith's memory while keeping the community informed in a calm, thoughtful manner. Even in moments of uncertainty, investigators and legal professionals moved methodically. Every detail mattered: timelines, witness statements, forensic reports, and each was considered with care. The slow, steady work reflected a commitment not only to justice but also to honoring Faith's life and the memory of her presence in the community. The community itself remained supportive and observant, participating in vigils, quiet gatherings, and remembrance activities. Their continued presence reinforced the idea that while legal proceedings are deliberate and measured, they are also part of a broader, compassionate response. Faith's story had prompted reflection, awareness, and care, reminding everyone that vigilance, empathy, and patience are essential in times of loss. As the rain continues to fall softly, imagine the calm halls of the courthouse, the careful conversations between attorneys and investigators, and the meticulous review of evidence. Picture the quiet focus of those involved, their deliberate steps, and their commitment to understanding the truth. Each small action contributes to the larger story, moving slowly but steadily toward resolution. While full answers may not come immediately, the legal proceedings represent a crucial part of the journey, a journey grounded in careful reflection, patience, and dedication. Through their work, authorities seek not only justice but also the preservation of Faith Hedgepeth's memory, ensuring that her life, her presence, and her story are honored thoughtfully. As we prepare to move into the next chapter, legacy and reflection, let the rhythm of the rain guide your thoughts. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly, and allow the gentle patter outside to carry you calmly toward a reflection on Faith's life, the impact she had on others, and the ways in which her story continues to inspire awareness, compassion, and remembrance. The rain continues softly outside, a gentle rhythm that encourages calm and reflection. As we move into the final part of Faith Hedgepeth's story, we focus on her legacy, the impact of her life, and the quiet remembrance that continues long after her passing. Faith's life, though tragically cut short, left a lasting imprint on the people around her. Family, friends, classmates, and community members remembered her warmth, intelligence, and gentle spirit. These memories became a source of comfort, offering small lights in the shadow of sorrow. Every story shared, of her laughter, her thoughtfulness, or the simple kindness she showed to others, contributed to a mosaic of remembrance that honors who she truly was. Community awareness and vigilance were strengthened by her story. Discussions about student safety, neighborhood watch, and the importance of looking out for one another became more prominent. Faith's story served as a quiet reminder that even ordinary moments, everyday interactions, and small acts of care can make a difference in protecting those we love. Vigils and memorials were held in her honor, with candles flickering softly, gentle voices remembering her name, and flowers placed quietly in spaces she once loved. These acts of reflection and remembrance provided comfort to her family and friends, and also offered the wider community a way to process grief thoughtfully and respectfully. The rhythm of the rain mirrors these gatherings, calm, measured, and steady, allowing space for both sadness and reflection. Even now, Faith's story continues to be shared, not with sensationalism or fear, but with care and empathy. She is remembered for her life, her presence, and the quiet impact she had on those who knew her. The lessons from her story, about vigilance, compassion, and community, remain, echoing softly in the minds of those who reflect upon them. As you listen, allow yourself to focus on these reflections gently. Picture quiet streets, rain-slicked sidewalks, and soft lights glowing through windows. Imagine her family and friends holding one another quietly, sharing memories of her life, and feeling the comfort of community and connection. The rain outside guides your breathing. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly, letting each drop bring calm, peace, and reflection. Faith Hedgepeth's story does not end with unanswered questions or tragedy. It lives on in remembrance, in the lessons learned, and in the quiet moments of reflection that her story inspires. Even in sorrow, there is an enduring presence, a gentle reminder of the value of life, the importance of care, and the enduring impact one young woman had on those around her. Now, as the rain continues to fall softly, allow your mind to rest. Let the calm rhythm of the night carry your thoughts gently into stillness. Breathe slowly, feel the weight of the day lift. And let the gentle patter guide you toward peace. Faith's story, her life, and her memory remain, quietly present, offering reflection and gentle closure as you drift toward calm and rest.